Oh, this is a bit of a long question. You know what? I caught one word, prerequisite. And Daryl, thanks for using that word. Law is not an afterthought. It doesn't become relevant only when you have disputes. It is, thank you for using the word prerequisite. On a personal note, could I begin on a personal note by saying I was sitting here listening to the beginning speakers, and I thought to myself, I texted Bernie, who's left, oh, culture and law are the two new topics now. Not really, because as you say, that is the prerequisite to things. But finally, I realized why the government appointed a barrister to chair the Financial Services Development Council. So I actually do have something to say, I suppose. And it is this. The question is about how common law helps, how Hong Kong's legal system helps. To answer the question, let's pause. When we think about finance and law, we tend to think about securities law, we think about regulation. I know Gu Cho thinks about that a lot, sometimes in positive ways, sometimes not. Interesting relationship between exchange and regulator, where the law comes in to help too. But actually, if you are talking about Hong Kong as an international financial center, or any place as a place to do business, law is relevant to you not just because, and frankly, mostly not because of regulation. It's because it affects you. It affects the banker. And I was sitting there thinking, oh, how am I going to illustrate this? And it occurred to me, I actually do quite a bit of employment cases for financial professionals. I sit on the International Court of Qatar in Doha, and that court has jurisdiction over essentially four things: regulatory things, contractual things where they opt for the international court, three, prudential things, so if it has to do with prudential capital, and four, which account for a large part of the regulatory tribunals and international courts' work, is employment. And it's because if you want international financial professionals to come work in Hong Kong, they want to operate not just for their professional business, but at a personal level in an environment that they're comfortable with. Their employment is governed by rules they are familiar with. Their property is governed by rules they're familiar with. So people, if you choose to buy a house, if you choose to rent, hopefully a palatial flat, that costs a little bit of money, you want to make sure that all those rights and obligations are familiar to you. And so common law actually comes in many, many ways. I also went to the source of this new hype about common law in Hong Kong, and that comes from the presidency's speech on July 1st last year. I finally got around to reading the full text, I must confess. I mostly relied on press release, but today I went to the full text, and I realized it actually mentions common law twice. First, it mentioned common law as part of Hong Kong's success in one country, two system, and part of the achievements that we have made in the last 25 years, that common law has continued to thrive. So that's looking back. And it mentions common law again, looking forward, as how it will contribute, how it is an essential part of Hong Kong's unique advantage. And I was sitting there thinking, well, it's rare for common law to be mentioned by a national leader. Most national leaders of whatever country tends to pay lip service, and they say rule of law, independence of judiciary, so on and so forth. And so it is an example of a national leader talking about the content of the law, which is rare in itself. And two, if one actually pause and think, you know what, common law is a essentially British in roots thing, all right? It has grown to be a much more international enterprise, but it is British in roots, English in roots, actually, not even British in roots. And for a Chinese national leader to recognize the value of this, it's truly embracing that, you know what, whatever thing comes out of the English tradition, the American tradition, the Chinese tradition, East or West, if it is good for embracing cooperation, it is good for international development, it is something that China will not hesitate to embrace. And I think that has a higher message, that not only is it practically valuable to Hong Kong as an international financial center, but that also, it shows how at a macro level, this is the kind of thinking that is underpinning the success of anything East-West related, which is you can't ask whether this is East or West as your most important question. You have to ask whether this actually helps the relationship as your question. And to that, I say common law is very, very much helpful to Hong Kong as an international financial center. It is helpful to Hong Kong. It is helpful to the international players in Hong Kong.
Thank you, Lawrence.